So if that product is decayed, we have to immediately think there are pathogens on there, and those pathogens are what are causing infections and making people very sick.
Welcome to MeatsPad. In collaboration with the American Meat Science Association, it's a platform dedicated to share breakthrough knowledge that is accessible to the global meat industry. On each episode, you'll have the opportunity to listen and learn from meat specialists and professionals about the whole meat industry. This podcast is brought to you by the U.S. Meat Export Federation, Ultrasource, equipment and supplies for the meat and food industry, Viscofan Collagen Casings, the best alternative to animal gut casings for a better taste and sustainable sausage making.
Hello, me folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. My name is Francisco Najar. I'm your host today. We started this series of translating Spanish interviews into English. And today we are talking with someone that I met a couple, 3 years ago, and I got to visit with her at the IFA show in Germany, in Frankfurt, a couple years ago. And she is an expert on chef life. She works for a company called Kerry Ingredients. She is the leader for the non-meat ingredients in looking at the alternatives and new technologies to maximize chef life. Today, we welcome Alessandra Bulgarelli. How you doing?
Thank you so much, Francisco. It's very nice over here. We've got a blue sky, no clouds, and it's a beautiful 24 degrees.
I'm a little bit jealous. We're here in Kansas, a little bit of cold still, and you're in Costa Rica, which is a country where always is warm. So, um, it's good. So I think we can start this episode by telling us a little bit about your role at Kerry, what's your position and some of your responsibilities, and I think that'll help us lead with the other questions ahead.
Thank you, Francisco. Yes, absolutely. I studied food engineering at the University of Costa Rica many years ago. I had the opportunity to work in the poultry industry to get a little bit of experience. And then after that, I went to Germany, to the Heidelberg area. And there I worked on training as a master butcher. I learned about deboning. This is something that I did not have experience with before. And with the entire program, I completed the entire program there to become a master butcher. And then I was hired by a company that has to do with supplying ingredients, quite a big one in the area. And that company was acquired by Kerry in 2015. So I've been working for 6.5 years for Kerry. My entire career, I have been working on investigation and development in the meat industry. Last year, I did a change, and now I'm in business development. And right now, I am giving support to all of my colleagues in Latin America about all of the technologies that have to do with meat. My special focus is on technologies that have to do with preservation. That's what I'm working on right now. I am all in on this right now so that we can guarantee shelf life for meat because we've seen a crisis developing in Latin America in terms of the labels that are declaring that a product has a certain shelf life and it does not. And so we're seeing bacteria in raw materials and other matters as well. So we are working hard on creating solutions for preservation of meat. So we give support to our clients so that they can know what is the best technology that they can use to help preserve their meat and meet the demands of their consumers.
Yep, and I was going to ask you when you mean shelf life, are you talking about just the amount of days of a fresh product, or it can be a processed meat until it gets spoiled, correct?
Yes. And like I was saying, we have so many meat products in the market, fresh ones, pasteurized, unpasteurized, etc. And what's happening is that they are saying that they have a shelf life on the labels that they do not have. And this is a huge problem because the companies need to guarantee that these products are having the shelf life that they are declared to have on their labels in order to protect consumers. So if they don't meet those labeling minimum requirements that they're giving, then we turned out to have quite large problems. And Latin America is such a diverse area with all kinds of different climates and environments. So the industry needs to be able to get their products to places that are far away and guarantee that they will have the shelf life that they are saying on the label that it will have so that consumers can safely consume their product.
Good. I think we can elaborate and maybe discuss a little bit further on this topic that we have visited with various um, people, various guests on this show, and talk about best by date, use by date. Um, I mean, I think there's still some misconception at the consumer level, and I think it's good to bring up another perspective, especially in Costa Rica and Central America. We can talk about Latin America. What are other countries are doing to help communicate and navigate with the consumer to inform the use or the shelf life of any food product, and maybe we it's focusing more on meat and processed meat products, but I think it's good to talk about this.
Now, in terms of meat products, it's pretty sensitive, this whole matter that has to do with shelf life, because we're talking about pathogens. And we're talking about ready to eat products. For example, fresh meat, it has to be cooked. So the responsibility is on the consumer to do that. But how about a package of ham, for example, that we think that we can open it, we can put it on bread, we can make a sandwich and eat it right away. There isn't any other heat or cold temperature that we need to put that meat through. So these expiry dates need to be respected totally and completely from their point of origin. So the companies have a responsibility to comply with what the shelf life is for their product. And this product be kept under certain conditions. It has to be consumed in a certain amount of time. And so what are we talking about with shelf life with meat? Well, it's very possible that that meat product, once it gets to the consumer, has already begun to decay. Because there's this responsibility that falls on the processor to have that product meet the shelf life that they say it will have on its label. So what happens is we eat it, nothing happens, and we feel good. And then we know that the processor of that meat has a process that is in place for that meat, or they're declaring that the expiry date is a little bit less than what it actually is so that they know that their product is safe, even in case it falls out of the cold chain or doesn't quite maintain the temperatures as it would. And it's very complicated to maintain that temperature on those meat products, and sometimes even more in Latin American households. But the first thing that what happens is that we open up the product and it's the smell. That's the first thing. Or maybe there's this milkiness to the meat. Or maybe there was space inside of the package and maybe something started to grow there. Or if we start to smell that it smells putrid or acidic, then we have to know we cannot consume that product. So if that product is decayed, we have to immediately think there are pathogens on there, and those pathogens are what are causing infections and making people very sick. It's a very simple topic.
And I think it's good to bring this up, and the cold chain is critical in this aspect and in chef life. And I've seen in many supermarkets that I go, especially when I'm visiting other countries, um, in the South. I mean, just talk about Central America or the Caribbean. I mean, a lot of the times, and I'm not saying everyone, but it's common to you. It's a common practice that you look at the temperature, and I say like I like to observe, and sometimes like why is this guy observing the temperature of the display, right? But I always am I'm kind of picky on this, and not only on meat and on yogurt and milk, and a lot of the times it's warmer than it should be, and just translating into Fahrenheit. I mean, sometimes you see displays that are only working at, I don't know, 45, 48 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's like, and that's, you're killing some of the shelf life of the product just by doing this. So it's kind of good to discuss this episode because sometimes we don't see this in the US, but or in countries like this or Canada, right? But I think it's a reality. You go more south and they're gonna save on electricity, they want to save on some overhead, and that's what you see sometimes.
Yes, that's right. And when we do these studies and when we do work with our clients, either they or we suggest that the study be done at a temperature that is a little bit higher. Normally, we do our studies at like 4 or 5 degrees because that's what we think that the industry is going to store the product at that temperature. And when they do, we see shelf lives that are very long. It's a wonderful product. And they don't even need, some of these products don't even need a preservative in order to have a shelf life that is acceptable to the consumer. But when we start to put the temperature up a little bit, maybe from 5 to 8 degrees or to 10 degrees, the product's microbiology completely changes. And these are more real conditions. These are the conditions under which consumers are buying those products normally. So we really do struggle to have those studies done under the temperatures that are more realistic because consumers also want natural preservative methods. And so, besides the temperature, we have other types of manipulation that are happening on these products. So, these are the situations that we're facing in all of Latin America.
The mission of the USMEF is to increase the value and profitability of the U.S. beef, pork, and lamb industries by enhancing demand for their products in export markets to a dynamic partnership of all stakeholders. Simply put, USMEF is putting U.S. meat on the world's table.
Excellent. Now, please tell us a little bit about more in depth about your role, how you speak with meat processors. I know we can talk about different alternatives and technologies. We can talk about pH, water activity. We can talk about many things, or some of the factors that have a direct effect or positive or negative effect on the shelf life of a fresh meat or processed meat. So I think please tell us a little bit about your work and how you're helping small meat processors to enhance or maximize shelf life.
Yes, oh, it makes me so excited, Francisco. It really does. What you were just mentioning about pH, about W, about temperatures, we know this. It's commonly known from Lysin as the theory of barriers. And everyone who is in university related to this matter has heard of this. And this also has to do with best manufacturing practices. So if we have a meat product that has a low bacteria load on it, maybe there's a certain pH, it can be pretty complicated in the meat industry. There's not very much that we can do right there. For W, yes, we can do some things to minimize the water activity, and we do have that in use in sausages and cold cuts and so far. But in the meat industry of fresh meat, we don't have that barrier there. So then we might have an aerobic atmosphere that also has an impact on the meat. Many years ago, I gave classes in the National Technical University, and we had one class to see the theory of barriers and how it applied to the meat industry. And so Lysin was saying that preservatives are the last barrier. The preservatives are not going to solve problems that are from way before. So if that meat already has a bacterial load that is very high, the preservatives are not going to eliminate the metabolites or the organisms in that meat yet, which, by the way, meat is a wonderful growth area. So we have to change these ideas. If we say, I have a problem, I'm going to fix it with the preservatives. And it's like, well, no. That's not the way that we should tackle this situation. First, I need to resolve the matter of the quality of the raw product. And then I need to talk about the barriers, like good temperature for pasteurization, Internal temperature getting to a certain level, making sure that there are no cold points, that the temperature is the same all around, and that the cooling was not done quickly, that the product was not in a danger zone for many hours. And then after I guarantee that all of that has happened, then I can start to think about the best preservative for that technology. And so after I have my theory of barriers totally under control, Francisco, there's a very important decision. Do I want traditional preservatives with additives that are mandatory in every single country? Or do I want to have a more clean label for my consumer because I am answering the market trends? And there is a wide gamut of possibilities here. We do have traditional preservatives that is approved by the regulations of our countries. And then we also have a variety of natural ingredients that can also serve to have a clean label. So if you see, you need to have ordered thoughts. I need my house to be in order before I make a decision about changing a preservative, for example. And I have to decide, what is the trend? We know that in Latin America, we have a very popular market because in Latin America, the prices are very low. And this is going on in every single one of our countries. So the clean label is focused on certain niches in particular. Nevertheless, there are products that can solve problems that we have, and they're not that expensive. And so it's a good price for consumers. There are many criteria, and we have to whittle them down to find out what is the best solution for a producer, for a product, for a brand, in order to reach their consumers.
Yeah, and in very simple terms, I mean, we know fresh meat is the perfect food for bacteria. I mean, you talk about aerobic bacteria or anaerobic microorganism, but it's the best. It's the best for them to grow, right? So that's why we need to be emphasizing on all these factors. We talk about temperature, pH, all this, and we can even go beyond and discuss about those good practices on the kill floor too, because that's ultimately all these pathogens and all these bacteria that we have present on the beef or hogs on the surface. So you can talk about hide, you can talk about the hogs. I mean, we have to have a very good understanding of good hygiene practices because that has an ultimate impact on the shelf life of meat. So I think it's good to again to talk about this. And another aspect that I wanted to ask you, and I think going a little bit off the tangent, is how living when you live in not in Ireland, in Germany for quite a while, and you dive into this culture, and I think it's a good very good perspective what you have, because you know some of the practices that are uh, taking place in Europe, now in the US, and now in Central America. So I think that that gives you a lot of value and a lot of vision to help the small processors in Costa Rica.
Well, yes. Oh, thank you so much for asking me about things that I am very passionate about. I love the German culture. Ever since I was a girl, I liked it. And I studied at a German college in Costa Rica. And I always wanted to be able to live over there and to be part of their culture and their language. And so when I did have that possibility to be able to be master butcher over there, I thought, oh, that is so interesting. And this is going to stack up really nicely on top of my academic degree so that I can have this artisanal career. The masters over there, they're the master butcher, the master baker, the master mechanic. That's how they call them over there. And these are trades that come from history, from the Middle Ages, from when people were extremely specialized in a trade, and that label has survived over centuries. So the master butchers are the ones that by law can put butcher shops in different towns, and each one is specialized in the products of their regions, of their flavors, of the raw materials, etc. And Francisco, you'll see the German culture. It is such a wide variety in terms of meats. The variety is enormous in terms of meat products. And it's, relatively in geographical area, a small country. But it has a cultural richness and culinary richness that is enormous. What you eat up in the north, you don't necessarily eat in the south. And so many years ago, even the butchers used to slaughter their own animals, in decades past. When I was there in 2003, I did see some of this going on, the slaughter and deboning that was going on in government sanctioned slaughterhouses. Of the things that were most impactful for me at that time was working over there in the butcher shop for over a year as an assistant, as an apprentice, honestly, to a master butcher, and to observe how they took everything into account, everything. And they did it in a way that is friendly with the environment, firstly. Secondly, in a way that is honest to consumers, not putting a little cut onto a product that doesn't go there, but taking advantage of the ears of the pig and the skin and the tail and using them in culinary dishes that are appreciated by the townspeople. And I love that part. I love seeing how they did that. Everything had added value, but it was all really ethically done and sort of historical. And then the flavors, oh my goodness, it's impressive. Oh, the cold smoked. I will always remember how everything was pungent and full of smell in the butchery. And I remember the deboning and how they took advantage and used every single tiny part of the animals and how they cooked them in the right way. Not like in Latin America where we cook some meat and it's kind of hard. Over there, no. Each cut was cooked in a way that had to do with its collagen, with its fiber, with its fat. We could go on and on for an entire podcast about this, Francisco. This was super, super interesting.
We've visited with a lot of folks, and I would say some consumers, a lot of the consumers have asking of the famous clean label, right? Trying to get rid of most of the additives or most of the non-meat ingredients when it comes to processed meat operations or processed meat items. And I think I would love to just to know what your thoughts are on this and to start laying some work on. I mean, we talk about when some people they I don't want to see any um, nitrite on my label, and I think it's good to understand what is the meat industry doing or companies like Kerry that have that understand these concerns from the consumers and what are some of the options that they're bringing to the table for the meat industry.
Very controversial topic, Francisco. There's a lot that people don't know, a lot that consumers don't know, and I think the meat industry hasn't done a good job of managing this because there are all kinds of incoherent messages flying around. Now, there's a reason why the meat industry is free of Clostridium. It's not the source of food poisoning, and that's because of sodium nitrate. And I will talk again about my experience in Germany here. We think that they're a market that is much more advanced in terms of technology. Guess what? They haven't stopped using sodium nitrate. It hasn't been satanized and demonized like it has been over here, like in the United States and maybe Latin America. So, can I do a sausage or cold cut without nitrate? Sure, I can. Let's talk about turkey ham or chicken ham. We want them to be white, 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 white. And what do? We put a little bit of nitrate in there and we turn the color to pink. And then the consumer says, "What's going on here? I'm eating turkey ham and it looks pink. Is it raw or is it well cooked?" So can we make sausages and cold cuts without nitrate? Sure, we can. But what do you need to do? Make sure that you have protection against Clostridium. And we can talk about that more in the future if you want to. But what is the difference between using a nitrate from a natural source and a synthesized nitrate with curating salt mixed in? The principle is the same. It's the same, Francisco. It doesn't change. It's sodium nitrate. But what changes is the source. And when we change the source, we have to change the statement on the label. So instead of saying sodium nitrate, it says extract of fermented celery. What does a consumer understand better? Nitrate or celery? Celery, they do. So that's a cleaner label. If we don't want to put nitrate in it, fine. We're going to have to protect ourselves against Clostridium and prevent that bacteria and pathogens in another way. If we want to change the consumer's view of how they interpret and how they accept these ingredients on the labels, then we're going toward a clean label. But nitrate is still nitrate.
Yeah, and especially nitrites, it's a topic that it's a controversial topic, and I want to point out that a lot of this is because they're not well informed about the benefits, the advantages of nitrites, and that's in my mind that's a lot of the times when you take the time to speak with small processors and explain the importance of these additives, they are also able to communicate to the consumer like we need them for some reason. I mean, there's there's not only one factor like as to why are we adding, let's say, sodium nitrite. Like we have plenty of reasons to add them, and that's just for the betterment of the meat industry and continue to produce a safe product. But yeah, it's a good topic. I love it. I love it.
It has the same effect, Francisco. And this effect protects the consumer. This is the most important message here, that the nitrate has a function. It has to be about 60, 70 parts per million in the product in order to avoid Clostridium from growing and stopping meat from being a source of infection. So the consumer needs to understand the advantages of a product having nitrate and the responsibility of the industry to make sure that there is the quantity of nitrate that that product needs. And so we have this matter of everything that forms when meat is decaying, and that's a very serious matter and it's quite controversial. But it's about educating the consumer so that they understand what the industry is giving them.
Well, thank you a lot for your time. I think it's you gave us a lot of insight on this topic, and I hope some of the processors that I think is good. And I think at some point we're gonna start translating some of the things that we do in Portuguese and some of the things that we can even do in Chinese. I think it's good information to just be, I mean, be informed, up to date on some of the new technologies and the. I mean, we can talk for more time on these things, but thank you again, Alessandra, for your time, and I hope to see you soon, possibly in Costa Rica to enjoy a good coffee.
Thank you so much, Francisco. Have a great day. Have a great day. Bye bye.